Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the First Minister unveils his spending plans for the year ahead. He promised to invest £1 billion in childcare, saying child poverty was his greatest priority.
We are seeing a lot of families starting to use the food bank, especially over the last 6 months. It's been more busy. We're seeing a lot more new faces coming into the food bank.
Opposition parties say the SNP has lost control of its budget and that the government has no vision. Also on tonight's programme, on the day the report into the Grenfell fire is published, we explain the ramifications here, and still to come. A specialist police team has been deployed in the search for Edinburgh mother Kasha Smith, who's been missing for almost a year. We hear from the students who grew up in the care system about the financial challenges they face at university.
Coming up in the sport, Steve Clarke is aiming for Scotland evolution as his team prepare for their first game since the disappointment of the Euros.
And the 385-million-year-old fossils found in a pavement in Inverness. Hello, I'm Laura Miller. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. The First Minister has laid out his programme for government for the year ahead, saying Holyrood is facing some of its toughest tests in its 25-year history. John Swinney addressed the Chamber the day after his Finance Secretary, Shona Robison, detailed plans for £500 million worth of spending cuts. So, among the announcements, 14 bills to be introduced in the next parliamentary session, in addition to previously stated ambitions on eradicating child poverty and investing in affordable housing. The First Minister says the government will consider the findings of the Grenfell Tower inquiry to ensure people have a safe and secure place to call their home. A Natural Environment Bill will establish the framework for statutory targets to restore and protect nature, as the SNP administration doubles down on its aspirations to achieve net zero by a revised date of 2045. And Mr Swinney vowed to create new offences relating to misogynistic conduct. Elsewhere, controversial cuts to arts funding have been reversed after a high-profile backlash from the sector. As our chief political correspondent Lindsay Bewes now reports, a day of difficult decisions has been met with derision by opposition parties.
Starting the day at a school in Edinburgh, the First Minister met with pupils helped by a scheme aimed at getting them into the workplace.
There's every chance that they could be ending up on benefits or in the criminal justice system or other areas that would actually cost the economy. So the fact that we're actually investing in these young people, showing them an opportunity, showing them a different pathway and allowing them the opportunity to succeed is actually just feeding into something that we should all be looking for as a society.
At Holyrood, John Swinney pledged to lift all of Scotland's children out of poverty.
No child should have their opportunities, their development, their health and well-being and their future curtailed by the material wealth of their family. Not ever, and certainly not today in a modern, prosperous society like Scotland.
Growing the economy is also a priority, alongside improving public services, including cutting NHS waiting times.
This includes meeting the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services waiting time standard nationally and clearing backlogs by December 2025. We will intensify our work to tackle delayed discharge. No one should remain in hospital any longer than they need to.
This cut is stupid and completely unacceptable.
Today's programme for government comes against the backdrop of budget cuts. There was a reprieve for the arts after protests during the Edinburgh Festival, with confirmation a fund for artists will receive the necessary cash. But a commitment to expand free school meals to all primary school pupils has been ditched. There was a promise to bring in rent controls and invest £1 billion in early learning and childcare. Elsewhere, Mr Swinney announced an overhaul of the rules governing ministers' behaviour, with independent advisers given the power to launch investigations. Opposition parties say the government had offered nothing new.
The First Minister is basically trying to make it impossible for his government to fail by promising nothing.
We have more of the same sticky plaster approach, the same rehashed announcements and the same level of denial from the third First Minister in 3 years.
Mr Swinney set out plans for new targets for climate change and nature restoration, but the Scottish Greens say cash to save the environment has been raided.
The slashing of public spending particularly on our journey to net zero, is selling out the future of our young people.
Away from Holyrood, this Glasgow food bank is on the front line of poverty.
We are seeing a lot of families starting to use the food bank, especially over the last 6 months. It's been more busy. We're seeing a lot more new faces coming into the food bank.
Services like this one left wondering if today's announcements will make a real difference.
Well, Lindsay is still at Holyrood for us tonight. Lindsay, lots to chew over there, but are there any surprises?
Well, Laura, looking at this programme for government, it is difficult to see what is in it that is new, what really stands out. It's almost more notable for what is missing. There was no mention today from John Swinney of that pledge to expand free school meals for all primary pupils. The government is now saying it cannot afford to do that by the end of this Parliament. And certainly it was difficult for a rabbit to be pulled from the hat, given the financial situation the government is in. Now, this programme for government was a lot like John Swinney himself, more unassuming than dazzling, more bank manager than showman. He would argue that he is looking at making public money work smarter, reorganising public services, making them more joined up. But he's left himself open to accusations from opposition parties that the SNP has had 17 years to do that in government and has nothing new to offer.
And Lindsay, in recent times, the SNP government has brought forward what could be seen as some controversial policies. Do you think John Swinney has moved away from that particular course?
Well, I think he would really like to focus on those day-to-day issues such as public services, but the government has kept on board a bill to tackle misogyny. It has put on the back burner a bill to tackle conversion therapy, so a bit of a mixed bag there. Those are two policy areas that could reignite the arguments around gender identity. Those arguments we know caused a lot of division previously within the SNP.
OK, Lindsay Bewes at Holyrood, thank you. It's 7 years since the devastating Grenfell Tower fire in London, in which 72 people died. Today, a final report exposed deficiencies in building companies, the London Fire Service and successive UK governments. Well, its publication has brought renewed attention on what the Scottish Government is doing to avoid a similar tragedy here. Here is a reminder of the background then. Holyrood was given more than £97 million to carry out removal of potentially harmful cladding on buildings. As of May this year, less than £9 million of this had been spent, just 9% of the total. A Scottish Government pilot scheme identified 105 buildings where cladding is due to be removed, about a quarter of all the Scottish buildings where dangerous materials were identified. Just last month, the first complete operation was announced in an Aberdeen tower block. By contrast, England is around a third of the way to achieving its targets. Katrina Renton reports on the concerns that remain.
So I actually bought this flat in May of 2018, and I'm talking about this flat here.
Abhijit Kadwe thought he'd found his dream home. 6 years after he bought the flat, he's still waiting for remedial work to remove cladding from the building. Abhijit says the dark panels are made of aluminium composite material, like those on Grenfell. The panels around his flat have been removed. He says this is a stopgap and wants the work to be done now.
We still find ourselves as vulnerable and as anxious and worried as we were 6 years ago. And when you actually see the pictures of the horror that actually took place in Grenfell, you kind of tend to feel that, you know what, I mean, am I doing the right thing by letting my family be in this kind of a risk? Or am I better off moving them away to somewhere safe?
Abhijit and his family have since moved away, but he did say that there are fire wardens and other precautions in place in the building.
So we've got a very enhanced fire detection system in place, so which will kind of alert the residents, like, you know, even if there's like an iota of a chance of the fire taking place somewhere, then it'll quickly alert the residents and they can sort of rush to safety.
The Scottish Government has a policy of not identifying individual buildings whose cladding it's committed to removing. But in July, it was announced that this block of flats in Aberdeen was the first in Scotland to have dangerous cladding removed and replaced as part of a government pilot scheme. Today, as the Grenfell report was published, we've been asking how much work has been undertaken in Scotland to deal with the issue.
Since obviously the fire itself, there's a number of actions that were undertaken, obviously on fire safety. We've obviously had the waking watch for some buildings that you've talked about there as well. We had the fire and smoke alarms combined also brought in terms of that. So there's things we've already done in terms of that. In terms of moving forward, we had the cladding bill just in May that was brought in, and we're working forward in the pilot programme just now. So yes, I think we're moving forward at a pace.
Scottish Labour has queried why more of the money provided by the UK government for remediation following Grenfell has not been spent.
That money has been sitting there for years. It's come from the UK government, £100 million. We've been asking the government to spend it to make buildings safe, and now they're talking about raiding it. The people who are in these buildings who can't get insurance, who can't remortgage, who are fearing for their lives, need this money spent on making their buildings safe.
Abhijit would love to go back to his home one day, but not until the cladding in question is removed and replaced.
This is a ticking time bomb, the way I see it. I mean, it's a death trap. So the sooner we can get this out of the way, the better for all the residents, because we can get back to our normal life and we can resume our normal life.
Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
To some of the day's other stories now. And the Japanese manufacturing giant Mitsubishi has announced plans to shed more than 400 jobs at its plant in West Lothian. The Livingston factory has been making air conditioning units for more than 30 years and heat pumps since 2009. The firm said it was in consultation about redundancies but had not reached the decisions lightly. The local MSP has expressed concern.
It is imperative that we all pull together to ensure that no stone is left unturned, that every avenue is investigated to see what can be done. But ultimately, we need to ensure that the workforce get the right support at this time, whatever the future may hold.
School pupils and teachers are being asked to share their experience of the pandemic in the latest survey by the Scottish COVID Inquiry. The Let's Be Heard project has already sought the views of hospitality workers. Now it wants to hear from children over the age of 8, teachers and early learning and childcare professionals. Schools and nurseries were closed for months from March 2020 and again in January 2021, with pupils learning from home for extended periods. A former top doctor at NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde claims there was an atmosphere of intimidation and bullying at the Health Board. Former clinical director Dr Penelope Redding has been explaining to the Scottish Hospitals Inquiry why she became a whistleblower in 2018 over concerns about patient safety at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital.
I mean, there's very much a culture of not putting things in writing, not putting things in emails, not recording things in minutes. There is an atmosphere of intimidation and bullying, and people being afraid to speak up.
And a plaque has been unveiled at the home in Stirling, where the late Scotland and Leeds United captain Billy Bremner grew up. Raised in the Raploch area of the city, he went on to win 54 caps for his country and 2 First Division titles and an FA Cup with Leeds. It's part of a memorial project which will culminate with the creation of a statue in Stirling. Now, a fresh search is taking place for an Edinburgh woman who's been missing for almost a year. Kasha Smith was last seen at her Wester Hales flat in October 2023. Police officers returned to the area this afternoon, as Richard Forbes reports.
The 36-year-old mother of 3 was reported missing in January. Police searched this area then, and they've returned here today. It's just a few hundred yards from Kasha Smith's flat. Kasha's described as 5 foot tall, of slim build, with blue eyes and long blonde hair. She also has a tattoo on her right wrist which says "Forever." The officer leading the investigation says a review of the existing evidence brought them back to the scene.
This is an area that we've had interest in before in relation to Kasha going missing, and as part of our ongoing investigation we're back here with some specially trained search officers to revisit it and do some more work around that earlier work. Obviously looking for any information that's going to help us answer the question as to where Kasha is or find answers for her family.
Police have been trying to work out Kasha's movements before and after her disappearance. The 10th of October was the last time Kasha was seen safe and well. This was at her flat in Wester Hales. The final contact with her family is believed to have been the following month. In January, her family reported her missing. Later that month, officers searched the woodland, canal and metal containers near Kasha's flat. When Kasha still hadn't been found by March, her family made this appeal.
If anyone out there knows anything, please, I'm begging you, please come forward. We need to know where Kasha is. I'll never stop looking for her. I love her. I miss her. Please help bring Kasha home.
With the first anniversary of Kasha Smith's disappearance approaching, as well as this type of physical search, police have been searching through all aspects of her background. Officers say while they still hold out hope for Kasha's safe return, there is the possibility that she may have come to harm. Richard Forbes, reporting Scotland.
With universities starting to return this week, new research has found that more students than ever before are in paid employment during university, with everyday costs like rent and bills topping the list of financial concerns. But the most likely group to be affected are those who've been in the care system growing up. We've been hearing from some of those students.
When I was doing my undergrad, I had to pull my weight quite a lot, do a lot of full-time hours whilst doing uni, whereas a lot of my friends would do part-time during the weekend or no work at all.
It's quite a hard balance and act to perfect, to be honest, because you're expected to do something. I think I was told in first year, 50 hours a week is supposed to be dedicated to your degree, and when you're working a job like I was doing 21 hours a week. It sometimes made the actual function of uni life impossible.
I remember my friends coming in, and it was those typical societies, the ski societies, the rugby, the cheerleading. They couldn't really understand why I was doing something else. It's like they couldn't even comprehend why I was always there.
First of all, it's really, really hard to get into university as a kid experienced student in the first place. There's a lot of hurdles that you need to jump over, a lot of self-advocating that you need to do to get here in the first place. My worker, Dan, came to my graduation, and I think that made a real big difference, because now when I reflect back on my degree, having finished it, I think my experience at university would be quite different if I didn't have that person alongside me every single step of the way, which a lot of people have when their families or other people that are important to them. That imposter syndrome of standing at an institution like this. University is very intimidating for someone from a working class background, never mind someone that's been in care, might be a young carer or estranged from their family. So that's the first bit of advice, is don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, because you can't.
The views of some students there who will be returning to university, starting this week actually. Time flies, doesn't it?
Time does
Summer
fly,
seems a long time ago back in Germany.
Feels all the longer ago, doesn't it,
yeah.
given how it all ended. But and all of a sudden we're looking at international football again.
We are.
Time is flying. Thanks, Laura. Yes, hello there. Well, evolution, revolution is the message from Steve Clarke as Scotland look to bounce back from Euro disappointment and begin their quest to qualify for the World Cup. They'll play their first match since their defeat to Hungary in Germany when they take on Poland in the Nations League tomorrow night, as Kerdi Nidsan reports from Hampden.
Change is in the air at the National Stadium, the sense that Scotland are after a fresh start after the disappointment of the Euros. Some fresh faces too, therefore, in the squad who turned up for training ahead of a very difficult Nations League group. The national manager keen to take the country forward after a deflating summer in Germany.
We respect the core group that have managed to qualify for back-to-back European tournaments. But then within that core group you have to try and add a little bit more, and hopefully we can add something that makes us better. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen across the two games that we're going to play now. But I'm looking at this campaign in the Nations League and thinking this is a chance to try and evolve the group so that when we do get to the World Cup qualifiers, we're in a better shape.
The next few games are going to be extremely tough. You only have to look at the respective world rankings of the teams in Scotland's group. Portugal are in the top 10, Croatia just outside it. Tomorrow's opponents, Poland, are 28th. That's 20 places above Scotland. And yet there's a steely determination within the national setup to be much more competitive at this level.
We're here, we want to be successful again with Scotland, and we know that the manager and the captain can help that in a big way, and that's why we're both here again. The manager wants to get to World Cup, he's made that clear, so do I. I want to play for Scotland as long as I can.
Andy Robertson was also at pains to stress that he and the players really felt the love from the nation across the summer, and that the onus is now on them to help the fans get over the disappointment of Germany, starting tomorrow here at Hampden against Poland. Kerdy Nidsan reporting Scotland at the National Stadium.
Now, the Women's Champions League qualifiers got underway today with both Celtic and Rangers involved. Saoirse Noonan's hat-trick inspired Celtic as they came from behind to beat Kuopion Palloseura of Finland after extra time earlier today and reached their mini-tournament final. Rangers are in action this evening against Arsenal, who finished third in the WSL last season, but manager Joe Potter believes there's no reason to fear them.
We can't really put Arsenal on too much of a pedestal to say that they're untouchable. They're there not to be got at, which is totally untrue. We're in a totally different position in our season. We're into our season. We've played a good few games now. Arsenal are coming off the back of pre-season. This is really early for them. So we've got to try and take advantage of these moments, and we've got to try and look at parts that we can try and hurt them. It's not all about Arsenal being up here and us being way down here and trying to catch up. It's recognising moments where we can potentially hurt them.
Now to cricket, and it was bad news for Scotland as Australia cruised to a 7-wicket win in Edinburgh in the first T20 international of their 3-match series. The Grange is the stage for all 3 encounters, and in what was a glorious afternoon, it was far from glorious for the Scots, who set Australia a target of 155, and that was smashed by the visitors, who raced to that target with 62 balls to spare. The two will meet again on Friday to do it all again, and you can watch the action live on the iPlayer. Now, it's been quite the day for Gordon Reid at the Paralympics. He was knocked out of the wheelchair tennis singles earlier, but he's now back on court in the doubles, looking to book a place in the final. Reid and his partner Alfie Hewitt are continuing their quest for gold against France's Stéphane Houdet and Frédéric Cataneo, and of course, the French crowd as well. So far, so good though. They've taken the first set 6-4. So that's one way of silencing the crowd a little bit there, Laura. Good start.
Maybe another medal in store.
Hopefully so. Here's hoping.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thanks, Laura.
Now, how often do you look down? I mean, really pay attention when you're walking along the street. Well, residents of Inverness might want to give it a go because fossils predating the dinosaurs have been found in the pavement there. They're the remains of a 385-million-year-old fish, and they've been walked over unnoticed until now. Ailey Davis has the story.
In all busy city centres, you never know what lies beneath your feet. But in front of the Inverness townhouse, a recent find uncovered the fossilised remains of ancient fish. But are people aware of the history they're treading on?
Would you be surprised to know it's a 385-million-year-old fish?
No, I wouldn't be surprised at all, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting?
No, to be honest.
Can I show it to you?
No.
Good heavens, that's astonishing.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
385 million years old. Well, you have a lot of history here. Yeah. Congratulations.
So I've just learned about it today, and thought I would come up and have a look, having just arrived. I know I learned about it today, but it's a new experience.
Yeah.
Some people might have noticed it, and certainly people will have seen it. It's a question of recognising it. You know, if you look at my Devonian fish, you could probably work out that it is a fish. The traces in the Caithness material outside the townhouse, I believe, are rather more sparse. So it's just a question of recognition.
Where's the butter and chips? You need butter and chips with fish.
Are you impressed?
No. No, I'd be more impressed if I had some chips.
These ancient fossils may have been a surprise discovery, and who knows how many more are out there, and maybe you'll be lucky enough to spot some underneath your feet the next time you're wandering around the city streets. Ailey Davis, reporting Scotland, Inverness.
Yes, so we see some mixed views from the good people of Inverness there. OK, let's go over to Laura to find out what's happening on the BBC Scotland channel at 9 o'clock.
Tonight we'll be speaking to a nurse from Kirkcaldy about her experience of working in Gaza during the ongoing war there. As the Forth Road Bridge marks its 60th anniversary, we'll hear from someone who helped to build it, and we'll have more on pavement fossils as an Edinburgh-based paleontologist encourages us to look down. All of that and more on the BBC Scotland channel at 9.
OK, let's take a look at the weather now with Christopher. Beautiful blue skies with a bit of cloud.
Yes, the picture tells us everything that we need to know about today's weather. Some sunshine, some cloud, a few sharp showers in the mix as well. There's lots more sunshine on the way, actually, and some heat.
Well, tell us more.
I will, thank you. Good evening to you. If you had the sunshine today, it was a pretty decent day of weather, actually, but there were some large areas of cloud and some sharp showers too. Into this evening, those showers fading away and we're left with a mixture of cloud and clear spells overnight. Not as cool as last night. Temperatures here in towns and cities around 9 to 12 Celsius, but notice the north-northeast wind feeding in cloud, and that means we've got a fair amount of cloud first thing tomorrow, certainly across the northeast and the south. So Inverness, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, down towards Dumfries, cloudy. Further west, some decent spells of sunshine, and those sunnier skies through parts of the central lowlands and Tayside, tending to disappear as the cloud builds through the afternoon for the likes of Dundee, Stirling and Perth. Now, in the sunshine, up to around 20 degrees, but under the cloud, cooler, and with the thickest cloud, the odd spot of drizzle, some mist and murk over the hills. Towards the west coast, though, what a contrast. Lovely blue skies here. And away from the coast, quite a warm feel, actually. For Orkney and Shetland, that cloud coming and going through the course of the day. As we head in towards tomorrow evening and tomorrow night, those winds still with us, feeding in that cloud once again. So the cloud rather stubborn for a few parts of the country. This is Friday now, and you can see the winds more easterly. We're dragging in some warm air from the near continent, and the air is just a little bit drier. So whilst it starts cloudy, it should dissipate quicker than it will do tomorrow. So as we head through towards the afternoon, more in the way of sunshine, higher temperatures as well, but some low clouds and mist and murk lingering around the Moray Firth, perhaps some parts of the east coast, maybe Edinburgh too. In the sunshine in the west, though, up to around 25 degrees, really quite warm indeed. And looking ahead towards the weekend, we've still got a decent day to come on Saturday, but the cloud will tend to build as we head through towards Sunday. Having said that, both Saturday and Sunday at this stage look largely dry. There'll still be some sunshine around, certainly on Saturday with temperatures into the low 20s, perhaps more cloud around though on Sunday, but still pleasant nonetheless. The warmest weather to come Friday. That's the forecast for now.
25 degrees?
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Christopher. Now tonight's main news again. The First Minister has laid out his programme for government. John Swinney vowed to invest £1 billion in childcare and deliver public service reform. He also reversed controversial cuts to arts funding after a high-profile backlash from the sector. And that is Reporting Scotland. Anne McAlpine will have your late news about 10:30 tonight. Join her then if you can. In the meantime, from all of us here, enjoy your evening. Good night.